In my talk about crisis thinking, we focused on three perspectives. In particular, we talked a little bit about what goes on during possible shock events. We noted the novelty inequality, that the potential novelty that you would face during a challenging or deteriorating situation is much, much greater than what will be eventually determined after the event. That's a critical and fundamental aspect of the way these three perspectives align and misalign that we talked about previously. This time, I want to talk about, right, that uncertainty. Right? During the situation, you have to act under this potential novelty, a variety of forms of uncertainty, lots of noise, as we've seen in the pandemic, the potential for changing tempos of activity and time pressure, and a wider range of threats. Are things going to be improving, or are they going to continue to deteriorate? You don't know until you act. And the resolution of uncertainty requires action in the face of that uncertainty. So what that means is, and has come out from research on naturalistic decision-making, cognitive systems, seeing cognitive work in action, and what goes on when we understand where resilient performance comes from, is you have to have tactics to hedge your bets. Right? Those are very simple, but puzzling. Hedge, but be decisive, seeming paradox. Right? Decisive, but synchronize across different roles. And be decisive, but remain ready to revise as change and new evidence comes in. Now, this is particularly difficult because remember, and no matter what course of action you go with, it can be wrong when looked at after the fact, as the novelty inequality highlights for you. Plus, this is all about time and change and dynamics. So under time pressure, you need to act, but acting early, it can be easily premature and miss things, where acting later, the situation continues to deteriorate and becomes more difficult to handle. So let's just briefly go through these different, 4 different tactics, right? Hedging is very simple. It means taking steps, but hold open, or value steps that hold open or create opportunities to change assessments, interactions, and courses of action. And that, as we've noted in resilience engineering, depends on anticipating potential bottlenecks, overloads, points of saturation ahead, so that you can build a readiness to respond before those new demands arise and challenge your ability to perform effectively, right? A simple example is early after recognizing an anomaly, your corrective steps should have some diagnostic value and remain easily modifiable because you're pretty sure new information will arrive and your actions will produce more diagnostic information about what's really going on, which might not match your early findings. This is one of the first things I found in studying these forms of cognitive work 40 years ago and looking at this in emergencies and control centers. The second one is decisiveness. You need to be able to take partial uncertain information, past lessons, and make a commitment to a course of action. This can be quite difficult under uncertainty. And you have to recruit others to support that course of action, right? But uncertainty tempers when and how to be decisive. So there's constraints on acting decisively that are particularly important in terms of managing side effects, given the interdependencies. And that means you have to coordinate, right? And your actions are really a commitment or moves in a multidimensional trade space. So these moves need to value responsiveness over the efficiency of resource utilization. And you have to build new forms of coordination because the standard ways of interacting and operating are pretty much guaranteed to be too slow and stale given the pace of events. Right? Decisive actions are changing what's prioritized and what's sacrificed given the kinds of goal conflicts you face. The third one then becomes synchronization across roles and levels. No one role can do enough, right, under uncertainty and risk and noise by themselves to handle all of the reverberations that can potentially arise as the situation deteriorates. Roles need to be stood up, delegated, configured, set up to interact All right, so that the team as a whole will not be overwhelmed as effects cascade and trouble worsens. So we have to amplify and synchronize these activities. That means reciprocity across roles is essential. Right? They have to adapt their roles in order to assist other roles in the expectation they will assist you should you be at risk of your response being saturated in the face of increasing demands. And then the fourth one is whatever you do, the ultimate sense of hedging comes back to a readiness to revise, right? As you hedge, stay open and create opportunities and make commitments to a course of action and synchronize across roles, you still need to maintain a readiness to revise the assessments of relationships, actions, models, goals, and priorities, right? And so the commitments that you eventually have to do come with the risk of getting stuck and being unable to revise your assessments and replan as new events occur and changes build up. Right? You have to remain poised to adapt. Again, this finding was one of the first things we discovered back in the 1980s as we studied how teams of people responded in emergencies, and is documented in our anomaly response model. So, simple message to take away for crisis thinking: hedge, but be decisive. Synchronize across roles and levels, but you have to remain ready to revise as change continues.